Howdy ho YouTubers, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be answering that age-old question, why don't I surround my fishery with trees? We've all been to them, they're picturesque, they're lovely to look at, however there can be some really detrimental effects to your fishery if you don't manage those trees in the right way. In simple terms, if you want your fish to grow, you need two things. You need light and you need air. Without those things, the fish won't grow properly. Carp are cold-blooded, so they need water temperature to be able to grow through their environment, and they also need sunlight and air exposure to be able to diffuse that oxygen into the water. That's done by wave motion and increasing the surface area of the pond. So what's the result if you have too many trees around a fishery? The first problem that you'll encounter is a lack of airflow. This will decrease your surface tension area and your wave motion. This in turn limits the amount of oxygen that's able to diffuse into your water. This gives you a negative effect on your water quality and fish growth. Another major downfall to trees is the amount of leaf load that you'll get in the autumn and the winter. So basically what happens when you get a lot of leaf load is all of that leaf load sinks to the bottom of the pond. This can have a massive impact on your water quality. It then acts an excess load of nutrient into your pond. From there the problems can really escalate because you have a lack of airflow and you've got a lack of light exposure. So what will happen then is you'll end up with what's called an anaerobic bacteria. We have two types of bacteria that exist in ponds. We've got anaerobic bacteria and we've got aerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria is what you'll find with lots of trees around. It's just down to the lack of ability for the pond to be able to sort of like go through its nitrification cycle properly. So you end up with big beds of silt. It's usually black, horrible. If you wade in it, it bubbles, it contains a lot of methane, it stinks, and you'll generally find nothing living in it. Anaerobic bacteria doesn't require oxygen to be able to thrive. So if you come across that stinky, horrible silt when you're wading, you know that's going to be pretty much a dead area because it's absolutely toxic to any kind of living thing. This is obviously something that I do not want in my fishery. So from day one, I've planted minimal trees. I do have trees around, however, they're pretty much evergreen, so I don't get a leaf load off of them, and I treat them more as shrubs rather than trees. I'd much rather prefer to grow my outer edges with fauna and things like that to give it a little bit of cover. That way you can manage the height of it. The other disadvantage to having trees, if you let them go too tall, they can cast a shadow over your water and that will decrease your water temperature. Again, not allowing your fish to grow. So moving on from the anaerobic bacteria, we also now move on to the aerobic bacteria. Now the aerobic bacteria is very different to what the anaerobic bacteria is. This is the one that we're looking for. It requires sunlight, it requires heat, and it requires air. Aerobic bacteria is an active bacteria that will turn over your silt and deal with the nitrates and the nitrites and giving you that decent nitrification cycle that you need. You'll normally find that if you wade in something that's got aerobic bacteria in it, there are no bubbles in it. When you rub your feet on the bottom, it just comes up as sort of like a cloud rather than all these methane bubbles, and it stinks. And that's the sign of a really healthy pond. It also gives you the ability to turn your pond into a very fertile pond, because once you've got that good silt, you can have things living in your silt. So all of your invertebrates, all of your insects, things like that, natural food for fish. One of the downsides to having a pond so exposed is you can get a really aggressive algal bloom in the summer. However, there are ways to combat this by planting your fishery and ensuring that the nitrate is taken out by those plants as much as you can. With your pond being a little bit more exposed, you're also able to keep that wave motion, which keeps your algae at bay. However, there is a big myth into algae being a bad thing. It's actually quite a good thing for your fish if you manage it correctly. Algae has a lipid content up to 70%. So that would mean that your fish are constantly swimming around in nutrient that they can absorb every time they breathe, enabling them to get stronger and grow faster. In turn, making it a free superfood. The best thing you can do as a fishery owner is to monitor your water quality with a oxygen meter. I do mine daily, first thing in the morning, so I'm able to monitor the oxygen levels and make sure they don't get dangerously low. However, I do always have a generator in my shed on standby in case I ever did need to get the water pump out and oxygenate the water. Touch wood, I've never had a situation where I've come into that sort of a problem. And this is mainly down to being able to balance the amount of light and air that I get into the fishery. I'm constantly got a breeze going across the lake most days, and I'm able to keep that water moving around. So hopefully that answers the question on trees and why I don't have as many as some of the other fisheries. I think that since I've had my lake, that's pretty much a reason for the fish to grow as well as they do. People always say that new lakes tend to produce bigger fish over a short period of time. I genuinely think it's because you're keeping that management up and you're disciplining that kind of area with the control of trees and things like that. As soon as you start to get that leaf load into the water, I think that's where your problems start to happen. So that is one of the reasons why I don't use trees, for those of you who have been asking. And if you've never come across the awful smelling silt before, I highly suggest finding a lake with a lot of trees in it and putting a pair of waders on and seeing how you get on. You'll find that straight away you'll come into it if it exists in the water. Usually you find it in corners of lakes and things like that, where you'll just put your feet in, you'll sink about 10 inches into the silt, and then you'll just get a big plume of bubbles up, and in that bubbles is just full of gas and methane, and it's horrible, it stinks. So yeah, hopefully you can all take something away from this video. And now you know the difference between aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. Any more questions or requests, please ask. I'll try and answer them best I can to the best of my knowledge, and I'll see you in the next video.